So I've shown my beds a few times over the last few weeks. I try to do a garden tour, but things are changing so rapidly. Um, Showing my plants once a month isn't really working anymore. But one thing that I've noticed as I spent a little bit more time talking to people, even within my own family, in fact, especially within my own family, is some of the lack of knowledge that surrounds people that are starting to garden, or even people who have gardened for a few years but only kind of know your basic knowledge, which is okay. You're still growing, and it's important to understand that many of us didn't start out just knowing all of the information that we know about plants and soil health, plant health, the different types of plants. It's just stuff that you pick up over time as you learn more and you learn how to grow more. So one thing I wanted to show is kind of how I transplant my pepper plants. Now, this year, although I have pepper seeds, and I'll probably be starting some to grow for late summer and fall because it gets so hot here come June or July that nothing except for heat loving plants will grow. So tomatillos even struggle, but they do better than tomatoes. Tomatoes, after it reaches 90 to 100, the blossoms and fruit will just drop off the plants. Peppers grow really, really well, and there's so many different types of varieties that's one of my favorite things to grow. And tomatillos are also something that I'm going to focus on instead of tomatoes. And then okra and melons are usually the plants that do the absolute best when it gets very, very hot. So I have a lot of time to grow my own pepper plants and even plant several more beds with peppers for a fall harvest, because we have over 280 frost-free days of a growing season here where I'm at. I'm kind of on the cusp between zone 9A and zone B, and depending on what zoning map I use, it kind of argues one way or the other. No one seems to really agree. But one thing I can say is that our summers have gotten hotter and our winters have gotten colder the last couple of years. So I've moved away from growing things like citrus trees because the last couple of years trying to protect them from the sudden freezing weather has been a bit difficult. However, things that thrive a little more in my climate and that are easier to grow, such as okra and peppers, I've leaned into a bit more. Now, this year, I didn't take the time to start peppers during the winter. I didn't really want to deal with keeping plants inside and starting them 8 weeks in advance and fighting the continuous fluctuation of weather. And I'm glad we didn't, because we have gotten several 30 and 40-degree days, which is pretty unusual for us to get this many cold days, this many days of frost, and even in late March for it to just continue to fluctuate so much. It's been kind of crazy. So I just bought pepper starts. We lose power a lot where I'm at, which is really unfortunate. And it's not something I wanted to fight with grow lights and everything else. And the way that our power grid works, it's just a complete mess. So while the city and everyone else is updating infrastructure and dealing with the power issue, I didn't want to have to worry about, are my peppers going to lose their heat source? Are they going to suddenly die? Are they going to freeze because of the cold weather? How am I going to start them? Will I have time to transplant them in time? And all of those things. So one thing that I decided was just to buy transplants. Now, at the local feed store and some gardening stores, our transplants are $4+ a piece for very, very small. I'm talking about 3-4 inch tall pepper plants. And that can be kind of frustrating. Although it can be good to transplant your pepper plants small, for me, it adds up really quickly. Those are pretty pricey plants for being so small. So for me, I decided to go to the local grocery store, and they had pepper plants here at HEB that were listed for, I think at first they were $1.50 something. Now this time they were $1.62 or somewhere around there. Still under $2 for a transplant, and they're pretty nice and decent size. So what I did was plant all my peppers about a foot to 18 inches apart. They kind of lean on each other, and they don't tend to have quite as many disease issues as my tomato plants. I'm not saying that they don't suffer from flea beetles or maybe viruses that other plants do. I'm just saying that for me, they're a low maintenance crop compared to tomatoes or other things, and the humidity doesn't seem to bother them as much. So I can plant them much closer together. If anything, peppers seem to thrive in the heat, and as long as I water them during our long drought periods, they still produce extremely well. Now, peppers will produce during a drought too. It just won't be as abundant of a harvest, which is fine by me because my plan has been to collect rainwater and to water my plants with it. In previous years, I've actually shown different ways that I have collected rainwater to use for my plants. So I'm pretty excited to see exactly how I can do that. Now, before I actually had a gigantic um, holding tank of water, and just the condensation dripping off the AC, which is nice clean water, um, could fill hundreds upon hundreds of gallons throughout the year, which is absolutely insane when you think about how much water is being wasted just through something as simple as condensation dripping off the outside of a window unit. So I thought one thing that I could do for now is put a 55-gallon drum under there to collect that water until we get some gutter systems set up. But either way, I will try to hand water as much as possible with these because, for one, I don't have all the setup to do automatic watering, and when I do, I'll try to do it off of the rain barrel system. And two, the city here puts so much chlorine into the water during the summer months because of algae and bacteria and other things that they're worried about being in the water, that it can actually be quite damaging to plants. And honestly, sometimes we joke about it being like drinking water out of a swimming pool. It's just horrible to drink. The taste is horrible. It is unpleasant. So I know it's not fun for the animals or the plants either, which is one reason I really wanted to focus on collecting rainwater. Now, as I said before, all these plants are transplants, and I'm going to show you exactly how I plant them. I got them for fairly cheap, in my opinion. 4 plants for about $6 is actually less than $6, but about $6 is a really good price. And HEB regularly has little coupons out, so if you're in Texas, you have an HEB, look for those coupons. If you see those yellow coupons out by your plants, you could potentially get your transplants for even cheaper. So that's pretty good price. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to transplant these by taking them out and planting them in the ground. And I didn't previously think that this was a big thing that I needed to show, but I'm finding out that some of the things that people who have gardened for a while or grew up gardening think is common sense or just public knowledge, it really isn't. And it's kind of surprising to learn, but I think it's really cool to have the opportunity to be able to show other people exactly how to do things. So let's go ahead and get started doing that. So on 3 of these, I went ahead and got Tabasco plants. I know that it's going to probably display backwards, and that's okay. But I got 3 Tabasco plants. The reason that I chose Tabasco peppers is that just 2 or 3 plants will reach easily over 3 foot tall. They produce an extreme abundance of Tabasco peppers. The more you harvest, the better they are. I like to harvest them green, but you can harvest them in a wide array of colors. And they're just absolutely gorgeous to make your own sauces. You can add vinegar to them and ferment them and add them to salsas. You can cook them with your food. You can dry them and grind them up. I mean, there are just so many ways to use Tabascos, and they are so prolific. So 3 plants will produce enough for most of my needs throughout most of the year. And then I really wanted some shishito peppers, but I've had some trouble finding seeds. So if you guys know a great place to buy seeds, let me know. But I found this one at the store, and I thought, wow, this is the only one. Let me try it out. Maybe I can cover the flowers with some mesh baggies and save some seeds from it, pollinate them myself. The cool thing about peppers is that they can be wind pollinated, or if you walk past them, they kind of blow and it drops down and pollinates them, which is why you can keep peppers as house plants inside and still get a fruit harvest, is something that I've discovered, which is really cool. So what I'm doing is only planting these about a foot apart, so you can't see it, but I have more peppers kind of off to this side that are planted already. I mulch in my ground pretty well after I plant, but before I plant everything, I like to leave it bare so that I can access the ground. And to be honest, a lot of the time I'm just using my hands to dig in the soil because I can't seem to keep up with my shovel. But this time I'm going to go ahead and use the shovel. Now this first one I'm going to plant off where you can't really see it, so I'm just going to set it over here and save that to plant later. And then I'm going to plant another one just about a foot away from that one, and then yet again about a foot apart. You can go as far as 18 inches. These plants get pretty good, and actually, now that I think about it, on the Tabascos, I better spread them further than a foot and do more like 18 inches because they're going to be significantly larger than most of my pepper plants. These are just massive plants from my experience. And it looks like I grabbed the shishito by accident. So I'm going to set that over there and plant this Tabasco. So I like to dig the hole and then take the pepper plant out, but for demonstration purposes, I'll go ahead and take it out. You just kind of slip it out of the box. And these roots, if I waited too much longer, they'd probably get compacted, but they look like they're doing well. I don't like to disturb the roots. I haven't really had an issue with them spreading out. And with these being pretty nice and they haven't gotten root bound by staying in there for far too long, I'm okay with going ahead and planting this as is without trying to loosen up the roots or anything else. So I'm just going to dig down right here. Now my soil, the top layer is a little compacted because, well, to be honest, the kids like to walk through the middle of the bed where the plants aren't planted yet. So I'm just going to dig down a little bit. It's probably going to be hard to see, but it's only going to be the depth of the roots of this pepper, because right here below the leaves, that's where I'm going to stop, where I see the last bit of root, or I guess the first bit of root starting up here on the stem. That's how high I'm going to plant it. You don't want to bury the leaves. Pepper plants are not like tomatoes. We always hear plant tomatoes and potatoes deep, cover up to the first set of leaves, or, you know, the top set of leaves, and that'll produce roots. That's really great advice for those plants because they have little hair-like projecta on them, little hair-like projections, and those will produce roots. Peppers are not the same way, and I really don't want to cause my pepper to rot. It doesn't always happen, but it absolutely can. So I just kind of plant it right up to where the roots start and the soil line is, and then I just take the soil back and rake it over the peppers. Now this soil that I'm using is a mix of topsoil and mushroom compost, and the mushroom compost has broken down really nicely, and it's creating this gorgeous soil as it does so. And so I just plant my pepper right up to soil level, just like that, and then I will get some mulch from our mulch pile. Right now I'm using arborist mulch. You can also use compost and a variety of other things. Some people use leaves. It just really depends. Some people like to use hay that's not been sprayed. Some people use different wood chips. I'm using arborist mulch because I got it for free from a local arborist company, and that's what's going to work best for me, and it's a great resource. Now I'm just going to show you a little bit that I'm doing, not a whole lot. And I just got a notification that my phone's actually low on battery. So I'm just showing you kind of how I mulch around it. Now I'm going to end up mulching this whole entire area now that I'll have plants planted here. But that's kind of the gist of it. It's really nothing that crazy or special. 12 to 18 inches is pretty good for most peppers. For Tabasco, sometimes people recommend 24 inches, but I feel like if they need a little more staking, and I kind of let my peppers lean up against each other. Plus I can get a lot more fruit in a smaller area. So I hope this answers some of your questions about planting pepper plants and how far apart I like to space them. I know it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea the way I do things, but now I'm just going to get the rest of these peppers planted and go ahead and mulch in the whole bed. And when I do the next garden tour for early April, you'll get to, hey baby, you'll get to see how all of this works out. So thank you guys for hanging out with me and just checking out how I plant this little pepper plant.